Welcome again to Inspired Voices with Sangwadzi Spiweka Chizamapfumo. We're back. This podcast brings ordinary people who are doing extraordinary stuff in our communities, and it educates, and we amplify their voices and also inspire other people. And today I've got my good friend Gloria Ndoro-Mkombachoto, who is going to talk to us about something very important, which I think mostly to people who are in the diaspora and maybe those who are at home as well in Zimbabwe. But Gloria she's a businesswoman. She's a business strategist, and she actually has been appointed as chairperson of Net One Financial Services. So really, she wears a lot of hats. And we are not listening to somebody who's some fly-by-night person who's telling us what to do. But what she's going to talk to us today is the ABCs of what you need to know if you're thinking of relocating and going back to Zimbabwe. We know lots of people have moved away from Zimbabwe. They go to South Africa. I mean, anywhere under the earth, you see Zimbabweans. But some have been there for a couple of years. Some have been there many, many years, like myself, really. And thinking it's time to go back home. Home is always best. So oftentimes people just think I can go back home and I can make it work. Or you hear, people are making are raising chicken, and you go and put your money into buying chicken. People are doing Zihuta, you go and get Zihuta and this, that, and that. People are getting Makombi and you buy Kombis. I mean, a lot of people have lost a lot of money. But Gloria is here to talk to us what you really need to know. She has lived experience because she herself, she lives in the diaspora. She went back home, and she is in between two countries, sometimes three countries, and she knows what you need to know. And I think this is a great opportunity for us, particularly those in the diaspora, to listen carefully what you need to know before you pack up all your stuff and head out home. So Gloria, welcome to Inspired Voices.
Thank you so much for having me.
Great. So, like I said, I gave you a little preamble of what we are going to talk about. I have had discussions with you on your observation of people going back home, having lived in the diaspora, and thinking, hey, I'm heading back home. What do we need to know? Do I just go home and say, Gloria, can I stay in your basement? Can I stay in your boy's car? And then from there, try to figure out what to do. What is it that people need to know before they pack their stuff and head out home?
Well, perhaps let me start with a story. Not so long ago, I had a little sister. We are not related, we are friends, but she's in a mid to late 40s. And she had been in the UK since she was 23 years old, with two kids. And she got very depressed whilst she was in the UK, and eventually decided that her outcomes from a mental health point of view were going to improve if she came to stay in Zimbabwe. She had been visiting Zimbabwe, I think, at least once every 2 years, and decided to make the move in December 2024. So she was supposed to get in touch, and she didn't. And then about a couple of weeks ago, I contacted her via app, and I said, where are you in Zimbabwe? We need to get together because you told me that you were moving in December. And she told me that she came in December, spent Christmas and New Year here, but by Valentine's, the 14th of February, she was already planning to leave. And she went back to the UK, and she arrived on the 28th of February. So she did not last in Zimbabwe for even 2 months, and she had come with her kids. What is very sad to me about this story is the fact that around September, because I went back to our messages on Messenger, around September 2024, when she told me that she was coming to settle in Zimbabwe for good, I asked her, what are you going to be doing as a source of income. And she said she's going to be selling clothes and other things. And then I said to her, your plan for settling in Zimbabwe is inadequate. And she said, I know what I'm doing. I'm going to be doing other things. And anyway, I'm going to be getting familial support for the school fees of her children. Anyway, to cut a long story short, she left within two months. So essentially, what people need to understand is it's for many people living in the diaspora is not the most desirable experience. If you are living in the diaspora now and you are comfortable and you've got a home, perhaps you are retired or you're towards retirement or you're still working and you've got a good job, all that did not come easy. You worked towards a particular goal to be where you are in the diaspora. Be that as it may, if you make the decision to come to Zimbabwe, first and foremost, you need to understand that Zimbabweans have moved on from where you left them. They've moved on. So you are not coming back to a Zimbabwe that you left. During the time you probably left, Zimbabwe was tough. People leave Zimbabwe for many reasons. Others leave for education and eventually stay in the diaspora. Others leave because they are economic refugees. Others leave because perhaps a partner moved and you get married and they persuade you to move. People leave for different reasons. But the point is, when you leave Zimbabwe, it doesn't stay stagnant. It moves forwards. And when you come back, a lot of people make the mistake of thinking that the lens with which they are viewing the country is still the same for everybody else. For example, you might be used to your own freedom. So it doesn't make sense that you come back home to your parents' home and you are scrounging with siblings for accommodation in that house. In the diaspora, you would have been living alone or with your family or with your children. Perhaps you're a single parent. But to come back and try and fit into that situation where perhaps when you left, the accommodation wasn't even adequate, and you are now coming back to fit there, it doesn't work. So, number one, you need to have your own accommodation. And ideally, that accommodation should be accommodation that you own. You've got your title deeds. I've got family that decided, actually coming from America, that they were not going to buy a house. They are pensioned from America. They received their pension and they did their numbers and decided that they were going to actually rent a townhouse in the northern suburbs where they are paying, I think, around 800 US dollars a month. And they are left with a lot of change for living expenses. Other people are making those decisions, but the majority are deciding to purchase their own accommodation.
Okay,
Now,
that's very important because everybody, well, a lot of people that I've met and are in the diaspora here and wanting to go home, people, you have to buy your own, to build your own home. Very, very important. Either in the rural area or in the city, it's very, very important because I can only come and stay at your place for a little while. Then after a while, people start, overstay you, too much. You've been there a
exactly.
little too. You can't do
To,
that. But then
exactly.
what I that's another point which we need to talk about, this purchasing of homes in Zimbabwe. and completing building your home and be able to move into your home. That's another story for another time, which ask you or and another friend who is in real estate to talk about. But then when they do that, when they move in and or they're renting out a place when they come out, do you think that's an ideal thing, or you saying there are different situations, depends with what you're looking for in Zimbabwe, if you want to purchase or you can afford to rent? What would you suggest?
My suggestion, to be very honest, is okay, before I answer this question of accommodation, you raised a very important issue. You mentioned the word visit. And I just want to highlight to the listeners that your reception in Zimbabwe from your friends and relatives is different when you're a visitor than when they know that you have come to stay. So you must always understand that if you were staying with family when you visit, when you come to stay, they expect you to be organized. But most importantly, if you were staying in an Airbnb, for example, it's no longer sustainable in Zimbabwe to stay in an Airbnb. You need to have your own abode. My suggestion to people having been browsing around the property sector and what is happening, to be honest with you, if you still have got the energy, you still have got the money overseas, and you are deciding to build from ground zero, or you are purchasing a house already, you need income. Sometimes you've got a pension overseas. That pension might not be enough. So let me take an example of a house, for example, in Eastleigh. Eastleigh has got houses that have got land which is more than half an acre. You can rent out your main house and perhaps build two more cottages, 3-bedroomed in size, 2-bathroom, and you stay in one of the cottages. The main house, probably you are renting it out, and the other cottage you are renting out. I know that Zimbabweans always like to have a huge property with a lot of land. We are people who love land. But as you grow older, what's important is for you to have financial freedom.
Yeah, that's very important because it's all very good. More is good, but managing it and maintaining it and all
Yes.
that stuff, it takes money. So that should be considered when people make such decisions. Very, very important. But when I spoke to you, you did mention something also when you're coming to Zimbabwe, the importance of doing enough groundwork, do enough research of what do you want to go there and do, because just arriving and said I'm back and hoping people are going to give you suggestions that really truly work, and when you yourself are not sure what you want, do you have any drive to do anything? Talk to us about the importance of doing groundwork and relying on people who are at home, yeah, and the advice they're giving you, because some mean well, some don't mean well. I read your post on Facebook, and it really got me thinking that it's not everybody who is all happy about and also how they perceive you as somebody coming from the diaspora. Talk to us about that.
Exactly. The issue of having adequate information is important, but that issue is layered. It's layered in the sense that when you are trying to find out how you can come back home, the first port of call is your family or your friends. A lot of people are being told by family not to come because the family is relying on your income. So that presents a whole new chapter of challenges on its own. They will probably never tell you the truth about Zimbabwe because they are now used to you sending them money. Then you've got a cohort of people who mean very well, and they'll tell you that perhaps the opportunities are in transport or they are in gold mining and so forth. But they do not tell you the nuances of making money in that sector. Then there are others who generally withhold information because they believe that why should they give you the information on a platter? You need to come here and do the groundwork. And let me tell you guys, um, doing the groundwork takes years. And for you to then understand those nuances, you need to have been coming into Zimbabwe, probably if you can afford it once a year. I know people who are coming here twice a year. Others come once every 2 years. But Zimbabwe is such a rapidly changing environment. What you might think you know 12 months ago has completely changed. But I want to give you an example of a story that I know that was close to me because I had proximity to these people because they were family members. There were a lot of people coming into the country wanting to duplicate their business. These people had a canning plant and they were producing all kinds of products. And they were taking these products to the supermarkets that you know, OK, Bon Marché, Pick and Pay, which was former TM, and so forth and so on. And people who were coming from outside had the money to set up the factories. They would import the technology, probably from China, India, where you get the cheapest technology to do that sort of thing. And they started producing. I know two couples who started producing, duplicating this formula. But after they had supplied, they were not able to get their money from those supermarkets. It's just an example. I'm not saying that this happened to everybody. And what they then did was they started borrowing locally, and the interest rates here are very high. They continued to borrow, plowing money into businesses where they were not being paid on time. And sometimes their clients, the supermarkets, would say, we are no longer paying you in hard currency. We are now paying you in local currency. And those two families ended up shutting down their businesses. Now, what they didn't know, the nuance was this family that they were trying to copy was well connected at owner level with some of the founders and owners of these supermarkets. So when there were delays from the accounting offices of those supermarkets, they'll just pick up the phone and call the founder, and the founder would ask the accounting clerk what the bottleneck is, and they were paid on time. But most importantly, when you are, say, supplying OK, OK Zimbabwe, OK has got a branch network throughout Zimbabwe. And sometimes they will say that you must be able to have transport that supplies each and every supermarket, right? And you don't have the trucks to supply your products. That then impacts on the logistics of getting your product to the market. Now, this other family that was successful because it had such great relationships with the founders of some of these owners of supermarkets, they actually said to them, don't worry about delivering countrywide. Just come to Granite Side where our trucks park. They leave every morning to go throughout the country to deliver to the supermarkets, and you can deliver in Harare in Granite Side. Now, help me understand, how would you get to know about this nuance unless you have stayed in this country and you have interacted with people at a certain level? So I find that the other problem that people in the diaspora do, they visit for short periods of time, they see their friends and relatives and other people living very well and doing certain businesses. But some of the businesses that people are doing actually are not the ones that are paying for the lifestyle that you see. And you go and you set up a shop, you are selling shoes and clothes, but perhaps actually the business that is funding that family is illegal foreign currency dealings. I'm not subscribing to people to come from the diaspora and get into illegal businesses. I'm not saying that. But all I'm saying is sometimes what you see is not what is happening. You see a particular lifestyle that you are emulating, that you want to copy. Meanwhile, it's not being funded from the businesses that you see on the ground. So we have to be careful. If you are coming from the diaspora, sometimes I believe you actually need sometimes to come and spend 6 months if you can. I think sometimes it's easier for couples because one can stay behind continuing to work in the diaspora and the other can be here scouting for what is the best thing to do.
But again, life in Zimbabwe, things are so rapid. The changes are just. I can understand coming twice a year or 6 weeks or something like that. But really, each time I go back, the country has moved. Not only people have moved, the country itself has moved from where
Exactly.
it was, to what it is right now. So it's important to understand that. And I know a lot of people are not. I'm glad because you're giving us the broader picture what it's all about. But a lot of people want to go back home to do kind of small scale things. I would say someone say, "Oh no, I can go and do chickens and do." No, I'm retired. Like myself, I'm retired, and then I want to go back home. And you want to go do chicken? I've never done no chicken in my life, and they want to go and do things that they hear people say work. I think people have to be very careful about that. You can't just jump on something because people are talking about chickens and or cattle. If you've never really done that, how then do you start doing things like that? I've spoken to a lot of people here, and you just have to keep quiet because what you are listening to, I can actually see problems around the corner.
Well, a lot of people like to do broilers, and I would like to share that anybody who is producing broilers on their farm or in their backyard in town, and they are not producing those broilers in the thousands, they are, it's a hobby. They are not making money. We know of people, but besides knowing people, I have worked um, as a consultant for organizations like the IFC World Bank and the APDF that were supporting projects in Zimbabwe. I know a lot of business models, and the model where you've got 100 chickens in your backyard, if you do the costing of that, you are not making money. But a lot of people do not know. They are not financially literate. They are literate in so many other ways, except financial literacy. So the business models that they are going into, they believe that they work. They don't necessarily work. I see a lot of people going into tobacco, and when you ask them, um, where is your budget? Where are your cash flows? They don't. So they forget that they put a lot of money into the business, and the turnaround time is almost 12 months. And in 12 months, if you just get back, if you plowed in 20,000 and you get back 18,000 or 20,000, you are not making money.
No,
But
you're
you see,
not.
people forget the money that they've put in. They are now looking at the sales that they've got and they think they've made money. There are certain business models that just don't work. I
Mm.
have seen an opportunity with diasporans. They've lived in the diaspora. Hopefully, they are well connected in the diaspora. I've suggested to other people in the diaspora that why don't you have, um, why don't you secure your markets for a particular product, for example? Um, it could be vegetables, fresh vegetables. Right now, there are agreements that are being signed between Zimbabwe and the UK, for example, and you secure your market. By the time you come to your piece of land in Zimbabwe, you already have an offtake agreement. So you satisfy the requirements for exporting. But there is so much that needs to be done. For example, when you export fresh produce, um, there is a license which costs about 30,000 US dollars. It's called a GAP, Good Agricultural Practice. A lot of white people who are exporting locally, like blueberries and so forth, have come together and they use one GAP certification. I find that within the Black community, we are not that cohesive. Our mentalities are always about, I'm going to do this thing on my own. And before you even start, there are barriers. Perhaps you don't have the 30,000 to get your own GAP. But you need, when you come into Zimbabwe, network away from people that you know. Go to Zimtrade, for example. Join the CZI, Confederation of Zimbabwean Industry. Join ZNCC. Go to clubs, be they at church or join Rotary. Those associations in your line of interest are very key in giving you vital information. For example, in agriculture, you need a GAP when you're exporting fresh beans out of the country. But if you beneficiate the beans and you are now exporting them as canned beans, you don't need the GAP certification. But who would tell you this if you don't
Nobody.
join? Yeah,
No, you can't work in silos, particularly with this kind of industry and marketing and
exactly.
agriculture and all this. You cannot, because you have no idea when you are in the diaspora. Nobody talks about this kind of things. People are just, oh, you want to go home, I want to go build a house, I want to go do broilers, blah, blah, blah. But not really big time like this. There are some people who have come there to farm on their farms. Some of them bought farms, some of them got them from their families, and and they have idea of what they want to do. They do vegetables and growing them. They're not flowers. You can't just look at them. You have to market them. You can't just grow cabbages and the whole whatever of cabbages. It looks beautiful, yes, but unless you have a market. But if you don't know how to market these things, you are not, you're, like you're saying, you put in 20,000 and you make 18,000. You're not doing any business, right?
Mm. It becomes a challenge if you don't have um, anybody to hold your hand. A story is told of a young man who was working at Wall Street in New York, and his father got ill. And the father was in business in Zimbabwe. And you know that the people in Marsh East from Mutoko side there, they are amazing farmers. When you are on that Nyamapanda road, you always see trucks coming from Mutoko with produce going to Mbare Msika. So this father, he wasn't doing any cropping. All he used to do was he would take his truck, go to Mutoko, get produce, supply it to Mbare. And when the son arrived, because the father was ill, he decided to help out his dad. And the dad was still in a position to tell him about the DNA of that business. Do you know, he understood the DNA and realized that even though in the US he was earning a 5-figure salary, his father was actually netting more locally per annum. And he went back to America and he resigned and he came back. But the point is, he had a father to hold his hand. When you do not have somebody who is close enough to hold your hand, it becomes tougher. And the turnaround time for you to really make a good profit without shutting your doors completely take 3 to 5 years. There is no easy cash in Zimbabwe.
No, no, there isn't, and also whoever you who is leading you. I mean, because there are cases of the blind led by the dead. Really, where you're going to somebody who really all he did was sell maputi, and he's trying to say, it's not fine, but it's not fine. But yeah, you gave us good examples. CZI, ZNCC, all those reputable groups where people like minds, or maybe some who know better, to show you the ropes. Because if you also have to be very careful who you hang around with, because
Yes.
if not, oh my God, Gloria, do you know we actually are at the top of our half an hour. I mean, I think I'm going to invite you again later to talk some more, because we just touched a few things here. And when I spoke to you, there were many things that I think are very pertinent for people who
Yes.
have interest in going back home, and it should be encouraged. But again, remember, Zimbabwe has moved on. People have moved on. Things have
Yeah.
changed a lot. You can't go there and recreate the magic that you did 20 years ago. It's not going to happen. It's a different set of people altogether. I used to do all kinds of little businesses, but each time I go back, my friends say, why don't you come back and do what you did? And I said, are you kidding? I don't even know people. I don't even have the network that I had before. So that, again, it was a small thing, but I'm thinking of people who are keen on going back home, what we need to know. And Gloria has given us just a nugget of what we
Oh,
need to know.
yes. A tiny
Yeah,
nugget.
it's very
Tiny
tiny. And
nugget. I
I'm
even
going to,
forgot about cars. You
I,
need cars that run properly. But if you want to do agriculture, why are you bringing fancy cars here? Because Zimbabweans love cars. Bring cars that are appropriate for the business that you want to run. But if you are coming to retire, by all means, buy a car
but
of your
even
choice.
even that, I'm going to bring you back one of these days to talk about retiring in Zimbabwe. So that's
Yes,
a different set altogether. Because when you're
yes.
70 to try and run and do mining and all this,
No,
I don't know what kind of
no.
physique you have, but it's going to take its toll before you even know. We want to talk about that, and there are so many things I want you to break down. So I'm going to bring you on part 2 of this, and we're going to talk about more of this so that people have an idea. And for all those who are following us, please follow me, subscribe to Inspired Voices, and also subscribe to her. She has her own podcast, which is called
At Heartfelt with Gloria.
Exactly. Follow her on that, because she has amazing stuff that she discusses on that podcast. And please follow us on Inspired Voices with Sangwadzi. I will see you next week. I'm going to bring another person, and I promise you, I'm going to bring part 2 of this conversation with Gloria, we'll talk, share some more information, which I know we all need to know before we run off to Zimbabwe and go there. And like 2 weeks later, I'm back to Canada to this cold. So follow us. And Gloria, thank you so much for this information. I know people have learned a lot and more is coming. And
thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome. And also have a good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are. And I will see you next time.